total of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections.
You knew better. You were better trained than any of those officers out there.
Police officers are not above the law, and they're charged and face the court's judgment whenever they go astray. Today, we'll be going through these cases where corrupt cops were instantly owned in the courtrooms. Former Jackson County Deputy Zachary Wester was charged with an astonishing 67 counts of racketeering, fabricating evidence, and false imprisonment. Zachary was accused by 12 drivers of having planted narcotics inside their cars.
These substances, it appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
Have you ever seen this before?
No. No, what is that?
I'm just trying to figure out how that stuff got in your car. You're gonna go to jail today for possession of methamphetamine, okay?
Oh man, dude, I'm serious, dude. Anything, what you want me to do, man? And I knew my truck was clean. I knew it was.
Anything in the vehicle I need to be concerned about? Bombs, hand grenades, rocket launchers? Okay.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine. No, sir.
Okay.
Now, the white small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video, had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
Were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
The court proceeding mostly consisted of evidence, as all 12 drivers testified against Zachary. Finally, the jury reached a verdict, and it was announced.
In the state of Florida versus Zachary Tyler Wester, case number 19-CF-431. We, the jury, find as follows as to the counts charged in the information. Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged. Count 2, not guilty. Count 3, not guilty. Count 4, not guilty. Count 5, not guilty. Count 41, guilty of possession of controlled substance related to February 15, 2018, as charged. Count 42, not guilty. Count 43, not guilty. Count 44, guilty of possession of a controlled substance related to April 17, 2018, as charged. Count 65, guilty of false imprisonment related to Stephen Van, as charged. Count 66, not guilty. Count 67, not guilty.
All right, Mr. Clerk, if you'll go ahead and poll our jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in your jury room.
The verdict was read, as all the 67 charges were read individually, and Zachary was found guilty of 19 of them, including racketeering, official misconduct, and possession of controlled substances. In a final hearing, the judge announced his sentence.
Mr. Wester, this court now sentences you as follows in this case. As to count 1, racketeering, which is a first-degree felony, you are sentenced to serve 5 years in the Florida Department of Corrections. As to count 7, official misconduct, as a third-degree felony, you are sentenced to serve 18 months in the Florida Department of Corrections. That will be served concurrent with count 1. As to count 9, official misconduct, a third-degree felony, false imprisonment, that's a third-degree felony. You were sentenced to serve 1 year and 1 day in the Florida Department of Corrections, consecutive to count 64. Counts 7, 9, 10, 31, 33, 34, 41, 44, 48, 64, and 65 are to be served consecutive to each other for a total sentence in this case of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. This sentence of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections is to run concurrent with a 5-year Department of Corrections sentence in count 1. Therefore, it is the intention of the court that you are sentenced to serve a total of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. I'm also going to award the defendant 58 days jail credit as to count 1 and count 7.
The corrupt deputy was rightfully sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. Well, this officer was definitely corrupt, but the actions of this next cop were so hideous he was given the ultimate sentence.
The court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months.
The tragic George Floyd at the hands of Officer Derek Chauvin on May 25, 2020, sparked a worldwide movement calling for justice and police reform. Chauvin was charged and eventually convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did. Not just the people who were in the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements, both from the Floyd family and the defendant's family. I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today. And it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief. Most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case.
Derek stood still and refused to show any emotions that would display guilt and remorse. The abusive police officer knew he was about to face a long sentence.
Cases, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever.
The judge made it abundantly clear that the sentence would not be based on public uproar and emotions, but would be decided strictly according to the law. That's when he announced the sentence.
As to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You are prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis.
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
22.5 years in prison. That's what you get for strangling and murdering a poor victim. Chauvin was then sent to the Oaks Park Heights prison. Next, we have a crazy instance where an officer couldn't control his emotions in court. During a court hearing in December 2012, the judge sentenced the defendant on assault charges. At this time, he tried to talk to the judge, but a police officer standing nearby did something shocking to retaliate.
Investigation for false imprisonment, assault in the third degree, assault as a Class 2 felony, and a misdemeanor charge as well in possession of drug paraphernalia.
I'd like to object first. If I'm under investigation, I thought the investigation came first, then the rest came.
Right.
Get on your feet. Don't turn on me. Get on your feet.
Deputy Brad Lovinger assaulted him and pushed him to the ground. The suspect suffered several injuries and was taken to the hospital. On the other hand, Deputy Brady was suspended from his job and later resigned. This wasn't the end, as a federal jury awarded $50,000 to the suspect. Well, this cop lost his temper, but you'd be shocked to find out the actions of this next tyrant.
At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up niggas. LOL. How humiliating and degrading.
In January 2015, Inkster police officer William Mendes repeatedly punched a black man during a traffic stop. He was immediately charged with assault and misconduct. Just before sentencing the racist cop, Judge Vonda Evans gave a powerful speech.
I'm going to start out with Mr. Dent. The victim involved in this tragedy is a 58-year-old black man who was driving his Cadillac in Inkster, a suburb of Detroit. On the evening of January 28, 2015, where his life changed forever. He was stopped by the defendant, a then Inkster police officer, and his partner, Officer Zelenowski. Mr. Dent was stopped for a minor traffic offense and ordered out of his vehicle. With his hands extended out of his driver's window, he was grabbed out, thrown to the ground, and struck 16 times in the head by the defendant. In his attempt to arrest him, he was thrown onto a window shield of a patrol car, bleeding profusely from a head injury. The responding police officers arrived as the defendant is wrestling the defendant to the ground. Mr. Dent was struck, kicked, and tased while on the ground by what appeared to be a group of angry, anxious police officers.
Judge Vonda went on to explain the disgusting actions Officer Mendes committed earlier. However, the worst was yet to come as she told the cops disdained reactions.
They celebrated after the defendant was beaten and cuffed. The video in the car shows the police officers fist bumping as a celebratory act of bravery by the defendant and his cohorts. But the one image that struck out to the court was looking at Mr. Dent in his cell, shaking his head. In disbelief of what had occurred to him. If his conduct was indicative of what he was thinking, I would have thought this: what crime did I commit? Being a black man in a Cadillac, stopped for a minor traffic offense by a group of racist police officers looking. As Police Officer John Zelenowski, auxiliary police officer, testified in court too, in his response to a text, was quoted as saying, "At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up right now. LOL. How humiliating and degrading that must have been.
It's shocking how these law enforcement officers berate and ridicule someone based on their color.
He was left in a cell for a number of hours before getting medical treatment. But after hearing the defendant and his fellow officers joke about his injuries as they were wiping blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. 2015. Please be quiet in my courtroom. Some years ago, 19 to be, well, 25 to be exact, I remember coming into this building with such enthusiasm, so excited. And I remember a lawyer telling me that nobody leaves out of this building like they came in. I didn't understand what that meant. 20 years later, I do. Everybody has a grand idea about changing the world. And you seem like you felt like you're fighting a losing battle. And little by little, it grows. It's a cancer. It starts to eat away at you. You become cynical. You start to look at pictures of homicides, not for the goriness, but as evidentiary value.
You can see the disgust and desperation on the face of Judge Evans as she went through the details of the case. Officer Mendes could do nothing but watch in dismay.
You go to social events, you tell people what you do for a living, and after they say, what kind of cases do you hear? And as a judge, prosecution, defense, does criminal defense, a police officer, after a while they say, we don't want to know anymore. That's the job in the criminal justice system. It's compounded with that being a police officer. These pressures and expectations force officers who have a pure desire to purely serve the community as an occupation to conform to this group mentally or face being ostracized and labeled as an outcast among that group. These methods of indoctrination are passed along to new police recruits in the academy by stressing the importance of obedience to authority through a structure of shame and honor. It teaches them to conform and obey to the prevailing standards of the police culture. Field training, the recruit gets a reality check of what it's like to be out in the city. They then begin to shy away from what they've learned in the academy, and automatically they become a prototype of really who trains them.
Miss Evans was highly critical of the entire police system that forced these officers to turn into villains. She's asserting that it's challenging to uphold principles in a corrupt system desperately needing reform.
I was out at a mall yesterday. I asked a woman a question. I said, you don't have to answer. How much do you get paid an hour? She said, $15 with benefits. Well, guess what? That's more than what Inkster gets. They don't get benefits. The equipment, the police cars are old. We went out to the scene. Early in the morning, there were people who were using drugs. They just kind of came out. And the only thing I could imagine was the only thing that is separating these people from drug selling are the police officers that appeared in my court. We rather put money in technology by buying bait cars and surveillance cameras. But that doesn't reduce crime. It doesn't deter it. Properly trained police officers do. They go to work every day with the knowledge that some of the people that they are sworn to protect and serve want to kill them. The media and their bosses scrutinize their every move, and they get paid worse than security guards at malls, who's the worst crime that can be committed is shoplifting.
She was also sympathetic to the cops, claiming there must be better pay and more programs looking after their mental and physical health.
We would rather save a few dollars to balance the budget than pay millions of dollars to reverse a tragedy that we could have prevented. I know that Mr. Dent would give back every dime of his $1 million settlement to go back to where he was in his life before January 28th. I wonder what would one half of that $1.4 million settlement awarded to Mr. Dent have done for the Inkster Police Department. Training officers that wanted to serve and not hiring officers that didn't belong. It's my belief that when we begin to value and properly compensate and train those that want to serve, then and only then will we as a community receive the type of services that we expect and demand from the defenders of our community, the police. It's amazing how poor cities like Flint can find millions of dollars to attempt to reverse a situation that $100 a day could and would have prevented. Mr. Mendes, the purpose of this long, protracted sentencing was to offer you the one thing that this court believed you didn't give Mr. Dent: fairness and due process. Being a police officer is a tremendous and very rewarding occupation. I believe it's a calling on your life to do justice in the community. On January 28, 2015, you did not fulfill your job. You performed just us. A game.
After highlighting the shortcomings, Judge Evans came back to the heinous crime committed by Officer Mendes as the racist cop listened shamefully.
That began with the police stop. The purpose of it was to harass and degrade a motorist in Inkster. The man chosen for your game was Floyd Dent, a black man. The game went like this. Let's follow a car in a known drug area, and based on your years of training experience, you knew that the motorist would likely be a black person, no license, armed with a gun or drugs in a vehicle. Upon stopping Mr. Dent, you knew, and upon stopping Mr. Dent, who was dead wrong for driving with no license or license suspended, running stop signs, and weaving in and out of the back street, which the court saw on the video. You and your sidekick, auxiliary police officer Zelenowski, caught your prey. Upon being stopped, Mr. Dent put his hands out of the driver's window in plain view. Your partner and you pulled him out. When he didn't move fast enough for you, you refer to it as resisting. I call it bowing down to your command. You utilize your dirty, hairy tactics and use excessive force to arrest him. Your job was twofold: investigate the situation, be a positive example to Officer Zelenowski. When your posse arrived, they joined you in the takedown, kicking and tasing and ultimately throwing Mr. Dent into a windshield of a police car with a dash cam, which I refer to as the eye of justice. You were so into your bravado that you forgot the eye of justice was watching you and recording this disgusting beating, seeing Mr. Dent slammed into the window shield with blood running down his face. The dash cam that was designed to protect you ended up being what convicted you. Fist busting after taking him down as a sign of bravery was just another cowardly act caught by the eye of justice. You knew better. You were better trained than any of those officers out there. You were more experienced.
After her powerful speech, she finally proceeded to read out his sentence.
Ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. It's equally applicable when he has the video. The eye of justice in this case. You betrayed your city. You caused your lovely wife heartache. And you caused Mr. Dent severe anguish. And finally, in the words of Vicki Yost, your commander, accountability is required to ensure continued community trust and healing. Today, I can only punish your conduct, but only you and God can change your character. I am going to commit you to the Michigan Department of Corrections. However, after weighing the allegations in this particular matter and looking at all the circumstances, including what you've done and who the person I really believe that you are, I'm going to commit you to the Michigan Department of Corrections as to count 1 for no less than 13 months, no more than 10 years. As to count 2, I'm going to give you 90 days credit for time served and close it out. Of course, it's going to give you 85 days for credit. You have 42 days to appeal my decision. That concludes this matter. Thank you.
Officer Mendes, who had been fired from the police department, was sent to the Bellamy Creek Correctional Facility. However, after just 14 months, he was released and is now a free man. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. It's satisfying to see these tyrants receive the sentences they deserve, along with the public humiliation they faced in the news and the courts. If you agree with me, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to stay informed about future cases like these. Also, if you enjoyed this video, check out the next video here.
I'm not leaving here.
Okay.
You have to
How many cops are here?
You're gonna be in the back of my patrol car in a couple of seconds if you don't give me your ID.